Hi, my name's Kenn Viselman. I'm delighted to be on Breaking the Biz, the podcast. And I call myself a cheap bottle washer and storyteller because what you find out is when you're a producer, you're going to have to do all kinds of things, that aren't so glamorous. And I'm delighted to be able to tell stories of all ages to people of all ages.
Stay tuned for today's episode of Breaking the Biz, an informative podcast where we dive into the world of entertainment by interviewing seasoned professionals who have made their mark in the industry. Gain invaluable insights as they share their personal journeys, offering advice on navigating the dynamic landscape of the entertainment industry. Whether you're an aspiring actor, musician, filmmaker, author, animator, or any creative soul, tune in for expert career guidance, insider tips, and first-hand accounts on breaking into the entertainment industry. Get ready to unlock the secrets behind successful careers and fuel your own passion for the limelight. Please remember to like this video and to subscribe to our channels for more great conversations.
Greetings from Breaking the Biz, brought to you by Yes I Can Unity Through Music and Education. I'm William Felber, your navigator through the intriguing universe of the entertainment industry, as revealed by the visionaries and creators who bring it to life. Stay tuned as we delve into diverse insights from the forefront of entertainment, hearing from pioneers, creators, and agents of change. Prepare for a journey filled with tales of innovation, resilience, and the undying quest for artistic brilliance.
Kenn Viselman, he gave a great intro, but he is a storyteller, a producer, but a lot more. He achieved something close to a legendary status, according to the New York Times, a true showman. Kenn is an unmatched reputation for taking unknown and faltering toy properties and turning them into overnight sensations. So by age 30, let's take two steps back. Some people compare him to the Tom Hanks character in the movie Big, a kid in a grown-up body, according to Inc. magazine. By age 30, Kenn was responsible for over $2 billion in sales. By age 40, skyrocketing to $12 billion. Yes, $12 billion. It is now estimated he is associated with over $27 billion in global success. Kenn has created, produced, marketed, and consulted on 50-plus projects. He's the producing partner for Teletubbies, credited as the genius behind the commercial success of Thomas the Tank Engine, and the driving force behind the rebirth of family classics, Eloise Noddy. You're talking to somebody who is next level. Kenn has launched future fantastical entertainment emporium for families, showrunner for international sensations, media heroes, the definitive family series about climate education, and already seen in 200 countries and 22 languages. Kenn is now set to launch his unique version of storytelling into the unscripted world with 3 new original series. Kenn's team is producing Itsy Bitsy Schoolhouse, a global didactic children's TV project, as well as The Wish Genie, based on his book of the same title, and 2 other original animated feature films. Kenn, I am so excited to speak to you tonight. I love the description from the New York Times, and I can tell you, anyone who can create these toys and these properties and connect, you have to be a special person. So let's get into it. I want to hear your story.
Okay. First off, let me tell you, thank you for that introduction. My mother wouldn't have done a better job than that. In fact, I won't be surprised if my mother somehow reached out and gave you that information. I'm just a guy who's trying to make a living and make the world a better place for kids, and their families. So it's always quite humbling. I never know what to do with all that. But thank you. I appreciate it.
No, extremely successful. That's obviously an understatement. I want to know, I want to hear your climb into all of the things that you have done. When you were a kid, what was the dream job? You said, when I grow up, I'm going to be.
I think that it's going to disappoint a lot of people. I did not have a childhood the way other people did, right? So I had a crazy, wonderful Willy Wonka-esque kind of father, and who just saw the world in a very different way and allowed me to kind of just be my own person. But I also had really, really bad allergies when I was a kid. So I was allergic to a lot of stuff that grew outdoors. So I spent most of my childhood indoors watching TV or playing board games. I am by far better at board games than I am in television. So just be advised, if you ever play a board game with me. So I just had a very unusual childhood. I used to go to antique shows when I was 9, and when I was 13, I was going to auctions, and I just had a very, very unusual childhood. I didn't imagine growing up and working in the world of television. That I can promise you. I thought I was going to be an architect. Then I thought I was going to be a child psychologist, and I just ended up just kind of following the wind and ended up where I am. I never intended to do this. But the one thing my father used to say about me was that I was the luckiest person in the world. And for him, that was a huge compliment. But he, usually when someone says you're lucky, it's because you show up at the right time in the right place. But my dad said the difference between Kenny and someone who's lucky is that he shows up at the right time in the right place and he knows what to do when he gets there. And that has always been my lucky charm, So what I really, really recommend that people do in life, and I recommend it to everybody that's listening right now, is that it's a good idea to have a plan. It's a good idea to have what I call a North Star. So you have a direction, but you shouldn't be so shut down and so focused on that direction that you lose opportunities that are presented to you on a regular basis. So the key is to make sure that you're staying present. Because if you're in the moment and an opportunity presents itself, then it's an opportunity for you to reinvent yourself. And I try to burn those photographs that are in your head that tell you what your life is going to look like, with the white picket fence and the house and all of that. And I just try to just be present and try to respond to whatever the universe is presenting me with.
It's so interesting what you said, though. Either an architect or a child psychologist, you kind of blend a lot of that into what you're doing with the toys and with the media. So it's just an interesting thing that I caught there. So in high school, talk me through your education and your process and what that looks like.
I've always had a job, right? Always. And that was super important to my parents, and super nuisance for me growing up, but I'm very grateful for it now, So I went to school, and I was a smart kid. I didn't really put a lot of energy into my classwork, which I wish I had done that. I wish I really focused on other languages, because I kick myself in the butt regularly that I don't speak more languages than I could, So I went to school. I had a full-time job. At one point, my father owned a couple drugstores, and I worked in his drugstores. And then I worked retail, and I'm particularly good at selling stuff to people. Is what I learned. In grad school, I went to school and to college in Maine and had a full-time job there. And I'm right now a middle-aged Jewish man. At the time, I was a young Jewish man, and the last thing you want to do is give them something with a cord and have them try to, make it work. And I was abominably bad at installing car radios, but I was miraculous at selling them. even if I didn't know anything about car radios. And I ended up working in this electronics store, and I ran the camera department while I was going to school. But I didn't know anything about photography. I mean, literally nothing. I know you press this button, and I could probably 50 or 60% of the time load the camera. Other than that, I had nothing about photography. But it was a little store. The whole store was only like 250 square feet, maybe 200 square feet. And I sold more Pentax cameras out of this little store than anyone in America was selling on a per square foot basis. We just were killing it, to the point where the vice president of Pentax cameras came to Maine to find me in many years ago and offer me a job. That was just the greatest, cushiest job ever. And I still can't believe I didn't do it. But they wanted me, I could fly anywhere on the globe and sell and teach people how to sell Pentax cameras. It was a pretty cushy thing, but I stayed in college. I had a similar offer in a women's shoe store that I worked in. I sold jeans for a competitor to the Gap, and each one of them, I very quickly became the best salesman in the chain. Because I listen, I pay attention to my customer, I try to understand what their needs are and then give it to them versus just trying to sell whatever we have, So I had a pretty ideal, cushy thing. I paid for college from my job, and the one fun little thing we did, I don't know, I'm going to tell you this, is we used to save all of our change. And so once a year, we'd save the change all year. And then in August, which is lobster season in Maine, we would go down to the seaport, take all our change, convert it into money, into dollar bills, and then buy as many lobsters as we could. And we'd fill up our bathtub with it and then invite everybody and just have steamed clams and lobsters for this lobster fest. So that was kind of like just a fun thing that we did in school. I did something interesting. In college, I went on an exchange program to a university in London. And we actually started a strike there. The students went on strike. And it was because of the 4 Americans that went there and complained about how bad the food was. And we literally did a sit-in in the college. And won. We ended up on the news. They ended up firing the caterer. And there was a whole scandal that happened. And I really found the power of my voice in that moment. And for standing up for what I thought was right, I got a full scholarship to a grad school in Texas and thought, well, that would be great. And I went to grad school for industrial psychology, which is at the time a new study.
And all of a sudden there's a solution.
It was about, no worries. It was, I do this a lot. I went to this grad school program. And the one thing I knew I didn't want to do was work retail because I'd done that my whole life and it wasn't really very challenging for me. And so I'm in this grad school program and I found it came very naturally to me because it was a new study in psychology, the idea of sick businesses versus sick people, right? So it was motivation and productivity. But I was particularly interested in a little teeny piece of industrial psychology, which at the time was known as consumer psychology. And the question was, what is it that motivates a consumer to purchase? Right. And I just found that so fascinating. And that I spent so much of my life doing it that I'm like, yeah, that's for me. That's what I'm going to do. And I ended up being remarkably good at this. And it was surprising to me because I'm not remarkably good at a lot of things, but I was remarkably good in that classroom. And we would take a test, and a test, instead of it being based on a scale of 100 points, it'd be 142 points. And I remember one test, I don't know why I'm telling you this, I got 141 out of 142 points. The next student in the classroom got an 89. And the professor asked me if it would be okay if he threw out my grade, because if he didn't, then everyone in the class would fail, So I ended up tutoring my whole class on this subject matter because it just came very, very naturally to me, right? While I was in this program, a woman that was in the program with me, her husband was the president of Bethlehem Steel, which was, this massive steel company, right? And she's like, I don't know why you're here. You should be in New York. You should be working for Abraham and Strauss. And I had no idea what that was. I thought it was a law firm. And I'm like, why would I go to a law firm? It turns out Abraham and Strauss was the most remarkable department store in America. And it eventually got bought up by Macy's, that got bought up by Federated, went up. But I went home from grad school. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. My parents are like, well, you're not staying here. You're going to have to get a job. And I didn't know what to do. So I just applied to every retail training program in America, going, okay, well, I'll do this. It will give me some additional knowledge. And then I'll find something else that interests me. And this is just an interesting little quirky thing. I applied to probably 17, 20 different retail training programs. Only one of them was willing to interview me, and that turned out to be Abraham and Strauss. And so I ended up working at this department store in their training program, and was a superstar there. I don't think it's because I was particularly smart. I think it's because the people in my group weren't particularly smart. So I just stood out there, right? But I got a couple very, very lucky breaks within the first couple of weeks of being there. And just one little random story is that my older brother's best friend was the largest vendor to Abraham Strauss in the department that I was working for, right? And so everybody from my boss, the buyer, to the group, the general manager, to the vice president, even the president of Abraham and Strauss, reached out to this guy to ask him, he needed to take 50 cents off the cost of a pair of pants in order for them to do it in a catalog. It had to have a certain markup. Anyway, the short of this story is that they couldn't do it. Even the president of the company couldn't do it. And so I just called Mark. I knew him, and I'm like, look, I know you really well. You're going to do this, so do it graciously or do it painfully, but you're going to give me this 50 cents. And they were amazed that they didn't know I had this relationship with them. And I came back with that 50 cents that no one else in the company was able to do. And it just put me on this fast track to suddenly I'm the man, my dad's right that I show up at the right time in the right place a lot. And fortunately, I've had a clue what to do when I'm there, and that's what's propelled me to whatever I am now. There are a whole lot of those stories along the way.
I want to hear more of those stories, but I want to point out some stuff. I mean, I think people sometimes think it's luck, but I don't believe in luck. I think you have to be in the right place, the right time, but I think there's destiny involved. But I love the fact of what your dad said. You have to be prepared once you get that opportunity. Lots of doors are opened up for people. And if you don't seize the moment, then it's going to pass you by. And again, it comes back to what you said, being in that present moment all the time. Also, I love how you talked about, the network and knowing people and able to get things done. I think that's really important as well. So the one thing that also stood out to me was sales was that you listen. And in communication, listening is the most vital part. Everyone wants to talk. Everyone is thinking about what they're going to say while the other person is speaking. But if you take that moment to really be empathetic and listen to what your customers need or what the boss needs or what the company needs, that's really the secret there. And so there is... Go for it. Yeah. Speak on that.
It goes further than that, Brett. You're 100% right. But if you look at every interaction that you have with anyone or anything, it's your relationship, right? And there is no relationship without communication. So, if you want to be a strong communicator, your ability to stop thinking and start listening is what the better you are at listening, the better your relationship is going to be. I do want to point out that Shiv is absolutely magnificent and wildly distracting simultaneously. I quite love that there's a costume character person on this call with us. So a little shout out to Shiv. I think it's I have a lot of questions now myself that I'm going to have to ask Shiv at some point in this conversation.
No worries. He's all yours at the end of it. So I want to talk. I want to talk after Strauss. So you get to, it's amazing the gifts that you have in sales. You get that one opportunity, you go in there, you seize that moment, you rise to the top, you show how important you are and the value you are bringing to that company. What comes next?
I'll tell you another little thing, right? So I don't know if this is the way the world works for everybody else, but the universe for me communicates very clearly. And when I'm not listening, it ramps it up. It ramps up the message and ramps up the message until I get it. Okay? And I'll just one little coincidental thing, and then I'll tell you where I'm going with this. But there's so when you work in a department store, one of the things that you never think about is getting the goods out of the warehouse, okay? So if the goods are stuck in a warehouse and they're not on the floor, you're not making any money, okay? When you're a department store and you have an ad running, right? You spend a tremendous amount of money on the advertisement, but if the goods are stuck in the warehouse and they're not on the floor, it's a waste of money. It's very logical, but people don't think about that when they go shopping in a department store. But because I worked on the other side of that wall, I know what that is. So they call that thing the DC. That's the distribution center. Okay. And at the time in Abraham and Strauss, there was a guy named Jerry. I don't know why. I'll never forget Jerry for the rest of my life. But so Jerry was a very nice but very lonely man who was the head of the distribution center at Abraham and Strauss. Okay. If you find that I'm getting into minutia, please tell me, because I'll move on.
I am loving it. Keep going. Okay. I want to hear Jerry. Let's go.
So poor lonely Jerry worked at the distribution center, and the only people that called him were just people that would yell at him all the time. Right? I need my goods. Where are my freaking goods? And they would be a lot more hostile with a lot more four-letter words. Okay. And I imagined, what would it be like to be Jerry? Okay. So I'm like, everybody's yelling at this guy all the time. And the distribution center runs separately from the store. Okay. So if you had, again, I had these $19 pants, right? So it was the back to school corduroy sale. We had to have these pants on the floor. We bought thousands of these pair of pants, and they're stuck in the distribution center. Right? My boss calls, her boss calls, his boss calls, that boss calls, the president of Abraham and Strauss, again, calls the head of the distribution center, and he goes, what do you want from me? I can't get, it's like, they'll get there when they get there. So the president of the store, you have to understand, he has, I don't remember how many stores, 50, whatever it is. He's a very busy man. They're bringing billions of dollars in revenue a year. The dude calls an assistant who's only been working there for a matter of weeks, right? And he says, so my boss is freaking out that the head of the corporation is calling. And he goes, do you have an assistant there named Kenn or Kenn something? She goes, yeah. She says, can you put him on the phone? So she's like, yeah. And she's looking at me like, uh-oh, right? So he says, hey, this is, I don't want to tell you something. So he says, I have a favor to ask of you. I'm like, yeah, what's that? Anything I can do for you, sir, of course. He goes, do you think you can get these pants out of the distribution center for me? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I called Jerry, right? And I'm like, hey, I know you must be busy, but I really have an urgent thing. He goes, for you, Kenny, anything, right? So I sent flowers to the guy. I didn't know what to do, right? So I sent him flowers, and you would have, I don't know anything about the guy. I just know that he's going to yell at all the time. And you would now believe that he's my very best friend. So when anybody in any department needed anything out of the distribution center, they would call me. Hey, I've got these shoes that are in a catalog. Can you get them for me? It didn't matter what it was. There's a flat screen TV, blah, blah, blah. And so I would just call Jerry, and I became, just because I sent this lonely, sad man flowers, I've now, it turned into something extraordinary where it propelled me to the next level at that store. So they ended up, they moved me to a very important store where I'm now working in the store as a manager in a huge department, a huge section of the store. Probably maybe 25% of the store was now me managing it, right? And the universe was trying to tell me it's time for you to move on. And I wasn't listening. So the drumbeat got louder and louder, and the job got worse and worse, and more obstacles. And it was like, I have to go. And so I randomly got a phone call from one of the manufacturers whose goods I used to buy when I was on the buying side of the store. And they asked me if I'd come in to interview them. And I was like, I think I have to. And I ended up going to work there. And they had a fun product that they really didn't know how to market or how to get it into stores. And I ended up taking this company that had only done, if I remember right, I think they did, the first one, they were only doing about $8 million in business. And I was buying half of it for my stores, right? So they wanted, I didn't know this at the time, but they wanted me to come there because they wanted me to help them figure out what are they doing wrong to sell this product. So it was just, that was just a natural thing for me. And MTV was quite big at that time, and it was relatively new, but the artists, their clothes, their style were significantly impacting what juniors were wearing, And so I just really, all I had to do was go home, watch music videos and go, yeah, we need crop tops and wide-legged, whatever it is. Like I would just know because I would watch Britney or whoever it was wearing something going, okay, that's what we have to do. So, but then when I got into the store side, it just became very clear I needed to leave. And I ended up going to this clothing manufacturer. And their business went from like roughly, I don't remember, 4 million, 8 million, whatever it was, to we did close to $2 billion within a year and a half, which was pretty extraordinary. And then there was some chaos at the company, and it was very clear that I needed to leave. And I left, not knowing what I was going to do. And I was home. The phone rang again. My phone rings often. When it does, I answer it with an open mind. And I ended up flying to Texas to go talk to a clothing manufacturer who really loved what I had done to help the marketing and the branding of this other brand. And would I be interested in going there? And, so I misspoke that they... the first company grew to, I can't remember now, but might have been 400 or 500 million. And then this second company, they grew to well past $1.5 billion. So it was just super, again, I just happened to have random knowledge about something, and I was in the right place to deliver it. When the next phone call I got was it was time for me to leave the garment industry. I just felt it was really sleazy. It just I didn't want to do it on a day in, day out kind of basis. And I got a call about a kids' TV show, and would I be interested in talking to them about marketing and licensing. And so I went to meet with them, not knowing anything except randomly, if you believe in random. I was watching television that morning and saw Ringo Starr and Dee Dee Khan on a TV show. And I'm like, oh, what's that? And then when I saw Thomas come out through the wall, I was like, oh, it's a kid show. And I turned it off and went on to something else. But when I went to this meeting, it turns out it was about that TV show. And I'm like, oh, is that the one with Ringo Starr and Dee Dee Khan? And the next thing you know, they're talking about hiring me. And my life is like that a lot. It's not nearly as planned out as people would think it would be, you know. So I ended up creating the branding for Thomas the Tank Engine, and I don't usually say this, and I'm very surprised they're going to do this now, but I'm obviously tired and I have no defense, so I'm off. I got hired by them because the business was failing, and it was failing horribly, you know. And the first, my first day, I'm there with the principals of the company. All the senior people are all there. I'm the new guy, and we have a staff meeting to introduce me. And the only thing I know is I've had 2 meetings that are scheduled for me, one at 10 o'clock and one at 11. That's literally all I know. I don't even know who they're with. And all I know is I've been told you've got a meeting at 10 and a meeting at 11. You are not to give them any markdown money. Literally, that's all I know. And the 2 principals leave. They literally leave the office and get on an airplane and fly to London, and they've left me with this very limited knowledge. I wouldn't even know who the call was with, you know. So the first call turns out to be from a very big toy chain that I don't know if they exist anymore, but they were based in the South. I think they were called Circus World or something. And the guy says, all right, are you writing us a check? And I'm like, no, what are you talking about? I don't know anything. And the guy says, you owe us $6 million. And I'm like, no, I'm sure I don't, you know. And it goes on for about another 30 seconds, and the guy's getting louder and louder and much more aggressive. And he says, I've been waiting for you, you know, to start working here for weeks. I've been, you know, you owe us $6 million. If you don't give us $6 million, a check today for $6 million, we're going to close out all of our goods in our stores, and we're never going to purchase your products again. And I'm like, well, you know, I'm not authorized to give you any money. And the guy hangs up on me. And they do mark all the goods down that day. The next call is with Toys R Us, and it's a very similar call. And Toys R Us marks down all the goods. Within 2 hours of working for this company, I've now ruined it. It's over, right? Everything.
They must have set you up.
They did. I assure you that's what happened. I was the scapegoat. And so now I'm in this horrible situation where I've just left, I had a good gig going. I've now started a new job, and I'm going to be unemployed by the end of the week. And this is a disaster. What am I going to do? Anyway, the short of this is that I had just seen a movie about a grandfather who had a train set, a very, very elaborate set that I think he spent like $40,000 on this train set. And his grandchildren wanted to play it with it. But he's like, you're not going to play with my train set. You know, you're not doing that. So I was thinking to myself, where do people who buy proper train sets buy them? Like, where does that come from? So I learned that there were, I don't know how many there are now, but there were more than 300 train museums in the United States, right? So I'm like, well, who goes to train museums? I'd have to be a train enthusiast. So I'm assuming that grandpa goes to the train museum, wants to bring his grandson, and if he only had something so he and his grandson, or he and his son, or she and her son could play trains with their family members, right? So I rebuilt Thomas's business entirely through those train museums, and so we did negative $70,000 the year that I got there. That wasn't the year before I got there, I guess. That wasn't me. Within 2 years, Forbes magazine did a feature on us and said that we had done $250 million and then $750 million. And now every year, Thomas the Tank Engine does at least $1 billion in retail sales globally.
As it should.
Yeah. as clearly as true. So that's been the case for a long time, because none of you were alive then. So I think that was 1989 to 1992 or 93, and again the universe calls, and it's time for me to go. I've done my job, right? And I'm not going because I love this project. I love this company. I love what I was doing. It was all working. It was all fantastic. And the woman who owned the company had an idea for a TV series. It was 10-minute episodes in a serial format that aired once a week. And she wanted me to sell it in America. And I'm like, we don't have 10-minute TV shows. And this was long before the internet, long before YouTube, long before anything. We don't have 10-minute shows. I can't just wave a wand and get broadcasters to change the way they broadcast stuff. But I did go to pay-per-view. And I got pay-per-view to agree to do the first made-for-TV, a made-for-pay-per-view family movie. Okay? And they were going to give us a very, very significant amount of money to do it. We got all the way to the end. My memory is that they even came to the offices to sign it. And at the last minute, Britt goes, no, I don't want to. I want to do a 10-minute serial format once a week, right? But the thing is, now I'm very well known, right? And I'm not going to put my name on a project that I know can't work and doesn't work for the audience. So I had to make a very difficult decision, which was I have to leave because I'm not going to do this, right? And I ended up leaving, not knowing what I was going to do. It's the first time in my life, or in a very long time, that I had no direction, no idea, no anything. And I had a dear friend who since has died, but my very dear friend Cheryl, she said, hey, you've got some free time. There's a licensing show going on in the UK. Why don't we go there? So I said, there's a TV show, there's a British television producer that I would love to meet. So I'll go with you if we can get her to meet with us, right? So what I don't know is that I was very famous in England. Right? Not like in newspaper kind of famous, but in the world of kids' entertainment, I'm very famous because no children's series has ever translated as a hit in America before Thomas the Tank Engine. So when I get there, all these British television producers are all saying, hey, do you want my show? Take my show. Do it. Here, I'll give it to you. Just take it. So, and I'm like, no, I don't know what I'm going to do. But by the time I left, I had a slew of projects that I didn't even have a company. And so Cheryl says, hey, there's the Bologna Book Fairs happening. Why don't we just go there? So we literally ended up going from the UK licensing show to the Bologna Book Fair, and then we went to MIP, which is a television trade show in France. So we went on a tour of Europe, and we're in the middle of I think we're in France, and we get a phone call in our hotel room. I don't know how anybody even knows where we are. We get a phone call, and this guy just starts yelling at me on the phone, and he's like, why haven't you reached out to me? I'm like, first off, sir, I don't know who you are. And second, I think you might have the wrong number, right? He goes, no, I know who this is. This is Kenn Viselman. And he goes on and on. He goes, I have a project. Every agent in America has tried to get the rights to this project. Why haven't you? I'm like, sir, I don't know anything about your project, and I don't have a company. And what, you know what I mean? Like, it was just such an off-putting thing. But I'm like, look, I'll be back in America next week, and if you wanna, I'll come and meet you, right? So he had a book called Miss Spider. I don't know if you know this book. Miss Spider's Wedding was the name of the book.
Which blossomed into Miss Spider's Sunny Patch Friends.
So yeah, well, it turned into that TV series. But it started off as this book. I have it. So is this in there? No, it's not in your screen. While I'm talking to you, I'll find it. So it's the illustrations for this book are just super, super beautiful. It's this book here. right?
Got
So
it.
this is the book that started off this whole thing. And David Kirk, the illustrator of the book, the author and the illustrator, he used unbelievable colors that you couldn't use. His original art was used with ink that wasn't legal in America. He had to get it in other countries apparently in order to get the vibrancy, and he was very, very, very specific. Anyway, so the long and short is, by the time I come home from this European trip, I now own a whole lot. I have the rights to a whole lot of TV shows and content, but I don't have a company. So as a joke, when I get to meet Nicholas, the guy with Miss Spider, he says, "What's the name of your company?" And I went, "The Itsy Bitsy Entertainment Company," and because it's so small that nobody works there. Was the joke behind it. That's how I came up with the name for the company, and it just fell out, and it's stuck ever since. But so what ends up happening is I shake hands with Nicholas, right? He puts out an announcement that I'm going to be representing Miss Spider, and the next day, Madonna decides that she's going to take this book and she's going to read it as a thing that she's doing to promote her new CD at the time, which was called Bedtime Stories. So she was going to Webster Hall in New York. She put a big bed with a whole lot of cushy stuff and little negligee, and rolling around on the bed, she was reading this book, Miss Spider. Well, what happened when Madonna decided that she was gonna read it, the pre-sales for this book were so extraordinary that the run, which I think it was like 10,000 copies, became 100,000 copies, which became 1 million copies. And suddenly I'm the genius and the crazy madman behind it all. And I just happened to show up at the right time in the right place. It's really all that happened. And so it is a current theme. If I were to write a new book, it probably would be my life is showing up at the right time in the right place, or something like that. It just needs to. It is a theme that follows. So from that, I started my own company. I launched that book. The British producer that I wanted to meet with in England turned out to be Ann Wood and Andy Davenport, who had created some TV shows that I quite loved. And together, we ended up producing the Teletubbies, which cemented me as more than lucky. It was it cemented that I kind of know what I'm doing. At least I got the benefit of the doubt from some of the doubters.
Your story is so amazing. Like, when it's time to move on. Sometimes people hold on to things and they just don't know when it's time to move on. And if it's that drum, if it's that voice in the head, if it's that I'm just tired and I want to create something new, when it's time to move on to the next project. I think
when you don't know it's the right time, the universe will just get louder and louder until you listen to it. That's the thing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I can think of times when I didn't listen to that voice or the universe, and like after I did, I was so glad I did. Walking, closing one door, opening another, and it's always amazing and refreshing. So, I love the fact of, the Madonna, but it also comes back to you watching the TV and being part and watching MTV. Like, everything has kind of followed you in your success. The selling, even early on, being able to sell those cameras in the shop. You learn that skill and that gift, and you have used that gift to navigate, to extraordinary levels. So you start your own company, you hit Teletubbies. What comes next after that?
Well, there's another fun little bit in there. So before the Teletubbies, before the Teletubbies happened, there was a show that I loved that Ann and Andy had created, which was called TOTS TV, TOTS TV. And it was the first bilingual children's television show. this show, I believe, us selling this show, what ultimately is what created a pathway for Dora to be able to come to life, right? It was a fantastic show. It was all puppets. The work, if you guys get a chance and you Google TOTS TV, especially the ice skating episode, it will blow your mind, right? What they were able to do with puppets, it's truly beautiful. And I never sold a television show before, but I was absolutely determined that was going to be the first TV show that I sold, right? So and I knew I wanted it to go to PBS. And fortunately, Alice Kahn was the head of children's programming at PBS. She's still the smartest executive I've ever worked with, ever. I have such profound admiration for this woman. So I gave her the show to watch, and she said, I watched it. I just don't get it. Really beautiful opening, but I just don't. I don't get it. So I said, do me a favor, will you? And she said, okay. I said, watch it with a kid, any kid. I don't care who it is. Watch it with a kid and see how they watch it. Because remember, I have my Thomas, right? My little kid who didn't speak until he saw Thomas the Tank Engine, right? I know the kids live in the same world we do. They just operate differently. They perceive the information differently. I knew if a kid watched this show, they would see what I saw. And they did. And this show, so I went back to Ann. I said, hey, I've sold the show to PBS. Ann already had an agent. Right, the TV station that made the show, they were the agent that was supposed to sell it. So I had to go fly to England to meet with these people, and I said to them, I'd like the rights to this show, and they go, there are more coffee stains on this VHS cardboard container than any other show in history. No one's going to buy it. I go, okay, can I have it? If you're not going to sell it anyway, can I have it? And they went, so Anne convinced them. I got it. And then I sold it to PBS. And I had already sold it. So I just went back and went, okay, it's done. It's going on PBS. And that changed the trajectory of my life, that show. I was now the guy that could sell anything, even the show that nobody could sell. So I did get involved in helping a lot of creators find pathways to sell their shows. I had a lot of conversations with Cheryl Leach, the woman that created Barney. I had a lot of conversations with Sherry Lewis and Lamb Chop, and a number of shows that were they were the next generation that came in behind Thomas. So I felt I had a great deal of pride about that. Not only helping ourselves, but helping other creators at the same time. That was super important to us.
I mean, obviously, being a pioneer, you give back, and you have those conversations, and you point them in the right direction to obviously have the same success. I want to point out, networking is very important, and you have always remained good relationships with different people. And when indeed you didn't have something going on, just that phone call of, hey, you're not really doing something right now. Why don't we go and explore? I also want to compliment you on your growth mindset, because not too many people, as soon as something is not lined up, they don't usually leave something until they have something, right? And you have that leap of faith and trust within yourself that whatever is next, you're going to conquer and be successful in. And I just think that's amazing.
Thanks. I don't want you to give me credit I don't deserve. What I always have confidence in is the work. I don't always have confidence in myself, and when I don't, I get it from the work, right? So that's the thing. I know the projects that I work on are meaningful and worthy, So when I start to question myself, I remember I remember the importance of the work. And look, it took something, I don't remember these numbers exactly, but it took the Power Rangers 7 years to get on television, and the Ninja Turtles 11. You know, this is the type of work that perseverance and persistence are everything, right? But the thing that I've learned about this, and it's not common really, but there is enough wealth to go around. There is enough success to go around. There is enough happiness to go around. You don't need to take it or try to take it from someone else. In fact, my experience is that when you give it to others, more of it manifests more, you know? And so whenever I talk to a young audience, I always want them to know that is truth. Right? That, you know, it super helps. If you look at the world of politics, what's going on in the moment right now, you know, Biden has made painstaking efforts to build relationships with all these other countries, right? In some ways, that's very similar to what I do. Right. But when you need, you know, a production is not one person that does everything. You need people. So you have to build those relationships. You have to build those bridges, and you have to make sure that you are sharing the success with everyone and not trying to hoard it. Because when you need to go back to someone again, you want them to be there. You know, and so it's not because you're being altruistic. It's because ultimately having teamwork and taking less now, you know, only assures that you'll make more in the long term. And so it's, I always focus my thoughts on that issue.
I think I want to highlight that because I always preach that it's okay if a job's not right for you, pass that along to someone else, and it's gonna come back. You know, we had a guest speaker last week who one person, you know, helped out and mentored a musician and kind of taught him the business. And later on, he was like, hey, you know, you still playing guitar? Come into the studio. And he's like, are you available right now? The guy went. Beknownst to him, he was, you know, working on a Beyonce album, right? So it is very true that if you pass it, pay it forward, it's going to come back. I love that you talked about collaboration in a team because that is very important as well. You want to surround yourself with people who have different skill sets than you do. And you, like you mentioned, the one lady, genius, you had admiration and you learned from those people. So getting talented individuals around yourself, you're going to learn. The other thing I wanted to highlight is when the project, you say a lot, yes to a lot of things, but if the project isn't right and you know you don't feel it, you pass on that. But when you do have that inner feeling, and you might not give yourself enough credit, but when you have that feeling and you said, watch it with a kid, watch it through their eyes, that is a very important thing because you're absolutely right. Knowing your audience is key.
I have, I don't know why you all are on this call. So I'm assuming that I'm talking about things that are interesting to y'all. But if there's something else you want to talk about, just tell me and I'm happy to, because usually what I do is I just say, what do you want to talk about? And I'll just talk about that. I don't usually talk about me.
Your story is amazing. And I'll tell you, first things first, I want to explain to our audience, you don't always have to have one path. There are many ways to have success. And I think your lesson of being present, being there, taking opportunities and chances that you believe in are things that every listener can take, and it's priceless information. But just real quickly, everyone on this call are talented individuals with disabilities. But within our program, we see all of the amazing abilities that these individuals have. This is the next generation of creatives who are going to change the world, who are going to create products, who are going to follow in your footsteps and be creative and make moves. So that's the audience. You have producers, music people, videographers, animators, storytellers, and I think most importantly, the being able to sell a product or even sell yourself in that elevator pitch.
Yeah.
All of the knowledge you are bringing right now is stuff that is going to be skills that they will use for the rest of their life.
All right. So let me say this to y'all. Whenever I hire someone new in my company, I always tell them you only have two things. You've got your handshake and your smile. And both of them are super freaking important. You know, you wanna, if they both indicate that you're present, right? The other thing I say to them is, whatever job I give you to do it miraculously, right? It doesn't matter how small it is. It doesn't matter how insignificant that job is. The better you are at that thing, the more you own it, the more your life depends on it, the greater your success is going to be in life. You know, I have one ritual that I do definitively every day. I make my bed, and I make my bed as if it was in a showroom in a store, right? It's so freaking pristine. If I could bring the camera in there and show you, you'd be like, there's no way you made that bed. I make my bed like that every day. I start every day with that focus, with that kind of Zen-like thing that I have it perfect. It's perfect. The seams are all lined up, and then I go and start my day, you know? And then I make sure that I try to be as present as I can be on every conversation, that I try to understand and listen. And then I react to that versus trying to plan the best response while the person's talking, you know? So I would advise you guys to look at that. What my success has done for me is it's allowed me to be very, very particular about what kind of projects I want to do. And not everybody has the luxury of that. So you don't want to do something that compromises your integrity, your morals, or anything of that nature. But you may not, every project you do may not be perfect, you know, but do it perfectly. That's the thing, you know. And now I'm at a place where I think one of my best skills is being able to look at something and see what's missing. And I use that skill quite often, especially in the development of content, because usually the way the content is created, somebody's sitting around the house, they see a chopstick and they go, oh, wouldn't it be fun to make an animated chopstick? And then they do it, and then they try to find an audience for it. I don't do that. I look at where's the void in the universe right now. And an example is there's a real need for climate education in America, okay? But there are no climate education series. There is a show called The Octonauts. I don't want to say there aren't any. There is a show called The Octonauts. It's not really, it's not what I have in mind when I think about climate education. I don't think it doesn't connect to the audience the way I would like it to, but it's a fine series, and I'm not in any way dissing it. It just left an opportunity for another series, right? And a lot of kids shows do one episode about recycling or something, but it's not really the show. Done a lot of research. 84% of kids across the globe are extremely worried about the planet. 2/3 of kids think that governments are lying to them about the planet, and 75% of kids are worried that the governments aren't doing enough. So I worked with a team in Italy that then became Italy, Japan, China, the UK, Vietnam, a whole slew of places. And we created this series, Meet Your Heroes, which is a fun and funny adventure series. Because what I've discovered is if you want to educate kids, you have to engage them. And if you want to engage them, humor is the best way to engage a child. So we made you wouldn't think of climate change and fun and funny as synonymous, but we did find a way to create these characters that are fun and funny, and that every episode is an adventure. So we made the series. The series at its peak has been available in 200 countries across the globe. We made a special that we aired on PBS, but we won't sell the series until we launched this climate education initiative that we're trying to raise the monies for now. But because I believe that this show is more than a show, it's become a movement and an opportunity for kids to feel empowered instead of hopeless. So we did a test in schools. We hired a really freaking lovely Uber fan who happens to be autistic. She loves Me Too Heroes. And we hired her, and she's doing a series of video podcasts for us that we put into classrooms in America. And I'm hesitant to tell you this, but I think you all know the truth. So I like to speak in truth. So I was very, very heavily advised to not use an autistic kid to tell the story. That other kids might not relate to her. That why not pick someone that doesn't have some form of challenge? And I'm like, no, I want the most authentic fan of this series possible. And when I tell you Brianna Carlson is she is by far the most authentic fan, because kids know authenticity. You can't fake a kid, and I don't want to. So we work with her. We put these video podcasts into school. We have some fantastic partners for this initiative, and one of them is a company called Adventure to Learning, which is the preeminent video in classrooms company. I don't know what you call that, but they're the one. So we did a we'll call it a test. At the end of the test, although they have thousands of titles, they go into as many as 30,000 schools across the United States. Me Too Heroes was the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 12, and 25th most watched video in schools in America during this time period. So it was quite an extraordinary thing. And it was all Brianna. The kids just were so excited about her enthusiasm, that she is, for me, the perfect host for this series, So I tell you that because I think if you're honest and authentic and true to your passion, people will see it and they'll connect to that, And you might not be what they had in mind because of the pictures that they have in their head. But as I said to you, the best thing you can do is rip those pictures up and stop that record player from telling you you're not enough. Because your passion, your commitment, and your belief in yourself or in the work, when you don't believe enough in yourself, will propel you to the next level.
You are by far one of the most amazing speakers we've been blessed to have. I want to tell you this. The mantra of our program is to turn your passion into your paycheck. So we are most definitely aligned. The other thing is thinking differently is what is important and what companies need. Because if everyone's selling the same thing, it's just noise. But when you find that one other thing that you're passionate about, which all of these individuals on this call have amazing brains and amazing ideas, that's when you're going to go far. The other thing I have to compliment you in, we teach 21st century career skills to the individuals on this call. We talk about an entrepreneurial mindset, which you have that entrepreneurial mindset. You talked about finding that void, and that's what you search for. Problem solving, collaboration, understanding different personality styles, empathy, resilience, right? Like all of the things that you bring to the table is so important for our listeners in this group, especially right here, because they're going to understand putting that time in, working on those skills is going to propel them to success. And success can be whatever you envision that to be. I mean, it can be 2 billion in sales. It could be, up to the 57 billion, right? Like it's whatever you find is successful in your own mind. The other thing I love is you talking about stopping the record player, that self-doubt, changing it to I can't do it to I just can't do it yet. Right? That growth mindset is so important. And I know you've learned it over the years, but I think you had that gift even young when you were in that shop and selling those things and connecting with your customers. But I have to just give you your flowers because I am so blown away by your story, your commitment to doing the right thing. I think climate change, we talk about, if you want to make people understand, you have to use statistics, you have to use real stuff to move people, and you have all that. So educating, using PBS as a platform, connecting with the audience, educating the youth. I have to talk to you offline. I am just blown away with what you're doing.
Let me throw something else out to you, okay? What's the age range of the people on this call right now?
18 to 30. Everyone here is in college or pursuing their own projects. And I tell them it's not always a degree you need. It's relationships, networking, and passion. But go for it.
Passion will get you pretty far. I think what you'll notice, if you haven't noticed it already, now as soon as I say it to you, you will start seeing it, is that classroom sizes are getting larger. And as a result, imagination breeds chaos in a classroom. Okay? There's a point to this. So just if you'll just give me a minute. As we become more technologically advanced, what we will learn is that innovation is everything. And as we go forward, you're either an innovator or you're a widget maker. We're going to find even further separation in wealth because of this idea of innovation versus widget making. The problem is that as classrooms get larger, and we find that teachers, we're having fewer teachers because they're not getting paid enough for the, violence in classrooms, all the reasons why, right? We know what they are. But what's happening is, and I'm going to give you a perfect example of a story, that when you're a little kid, you go into a classroom, the teacher gives you a picture, a black illustration of a cow, and tells you to paint the cow in. If you decide to draw udders on the cow, you create anarchy. And if you try to ask the teacher of the class, but don't cows have udders? They don't have the bandwidth for this. They need the cows drawn in. They don't need you asking questions about udders. And you end up going to the principal's office because you drew udders instead of drawing in the cow. I tell you this because this happened to a professor of mine when I was in college, where he had to leave school. He was told there was an emergency at his daughter's class, and he got to the class only to find out that she had been drawing udders instead of coloring in the cow. Okay? I understand the teacher. The teacher just can't have 26 kids all running off and doing something different. She needs to homogenize the classroom. She needs to get kids to put their imagination aside and do the task at hand. Okay? The thing is that you have to learn how to harness your imagination. And if you don't do it when you're a kid, it's super hard to get your imagination back as an adult, right? So for this project, Meet True Heroes, we're doing this large climate education initiative. In schools, you watch the episode of the show and you get an age-graded curriculum, whether you're 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, that's aged specifically for you in the classroom about climate and climate change, et cetera, the environment, blah, blah, blah. But for the on-screen, for the other part of it, it's all about harnessing your imagination. It's about getting kids to explore because problem solving, innovation, imagine all of that comes from you being creative and creativity. And we have to encourage that behavior. You should be going on a date with yourself once a week to go do something that's just fun and creative. I don't care if it's painting, I don't care what it is, but you should just do something that helps you to be more creative, to do more problem solving things, because that is going to open up a portal for you that's going to make your success, whatever success looks like for you, more likely to happen. But I do believe there's a guy named, he wrote this book, it's always here, I always have it on my desk, called Imagination First. And it's just a really brilliant book that was written a number of years ago, but it's really written about the importance of harnessing your imagination. And that tool of being able to use your imagination at your disposal, have it at your disposal, is really going to help you to be more successful, whether you're a bus driver, whether you're a scientist, or a school teacher. It really doesn't matter. That imagination building is only going to make you better at what you do. So I always like to tell people that, because I think it gets lost somewhere down the road.
Kenn, I want to absolutely thank you for making time for us. I know you are an extremely busy person. Fascinating stuff that you have covered tonight. I want to wish you continued success in your career, whatever comes next. I know there's many different, when indeed you get that noise and you move on, but I think the work you're doing right now might be the most important work that you've ever done. So keep up what you're doing there with educating and taking care of our planet. Again, you embrace all of the skills that we are teaching these individuals they need to be successful, and you are a perfect role model for taking chances and seeing the beauty and the intelligence of individuals, creatives with disabilities, and I just want to applaud you for your work.
Thank you, Brett. I really appreciate it, and I'd like to just leave you all with a thought, right? I don't know any of your lives, right? I do have a number of friends with various challenges, and I love your endearing spirit and your enduring. I love that you guys know that you've been given a challenge because you can handle it. Okay, you've been given an obstacle because you can deal with it. Right? Use that knowledge, and you will end up creating something that's going to be more beautiful and more interesting because of the challenges that you've had to get to that place. And I don't think a lot of people understand it, but if you're able to maintain your inner child, you're able to harness your creativity, you're able to just get through the day-to-day challenges that people that don't have those same kind of challenges deal with every day. You're already working harder than most people are, and you will end up creating something if you just stay the course, right? That's all I can really give you for best advice is don't let anybody tell you can't, because you can.
Amen. On that note, we're closing. Kenn, you are the man, the most inspiring individual we've ever been blessed to speak with. I am going to reach out to you tomorrow because I'm just fascinated with the work you're doing. God bless you, and thank you again for being with us on Breaking the Biz.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate your time and spending time.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
As we conclude another enriching episode, we hope you found inspiration in the stories shared today. Let's take a moment to honor Yes I Can's role in bringing Breaking the Biz to life. Yes I Can's commitment to empowering young people with disabilities through education, advocacy, and mentorship shines brightly, paving paths of opportunity and dialogue. This podcast celebrates the organization's dedication to nurturing talent and facilitating impactful discussions. Breaking the Biz is more than a podcast. It's a part of Yes I Can's broader mission to amplify voices, dismantle barriers, and craft a world that's more inclusive and accessible for everyone. Each episode is a chapter in our shared narrative of progress, education, and empowerment, driven by the spirit of Yes I Can. Thank you for spending your time with us on Breaking the Biz. Continue to challenge the status quo and share stories that resonate. Until our paths cross again, let's keep transforming aspirations into achievements and infuse every endeavor with optimism. Here's to advancing the landscape of the entertainment industry, one episode at a time. I'm your host, William Felber. See you next time.